The Big 12 tackles the transfer portal a little bit differently. But why is it? And why are they having so much success?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. And today, we're going to dive into the Big 12, why they make such great emphasis on the portal, but not necessarily always with the top guys. Going to break this down with one of my guys, Cody from Oklahoma State. He does a great job covering it. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how Oklahoma State has success, some of the signees and different players across the conference, and compare them around college football. So let's bring in Mr. Cody right now. Locked on O State all day. Cody Stovall, Mr. Stovall, what's going on, man? Everything good out your way?
Yeah, it's a very exciting time to be a Cowboy. And like you had mentioned in the opener, I do believe that it's an exciting time for the Big 12. You had mentioned it. We kind of view things in the transfer portal a little bit differently. And what I think the correlation is, because the schools like Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, we had to spend extra time digging up the 2 stars and the 3 stars to get them developmentally readily, to play in the NFL. And look at OU. What they did for years, and they admitted it, was they would wait until the week before National Signing Day and see what developmental evaluations Oklahoma State had cooked up, and then they would go offer those guys. So people have used the Kansas States and Oklahoma States of the world to do some of their vetting throughout the course of history. And I think because of that evaluation stages that those schools have found in high school, we've kind of been able to transfer that to the transfer portal. So the same evaluations of the 2-star guys in high school are now getting done for the guys at Sacramento State or Henry and Emory or whatever the case may be. So it's the same thing. The only difference is we're doing it with college evaluations instead of high school evaluations, but we're still finding that niche to get the gems, unearth the gems and make them productive.
I'm glad you just jumped in before I even asked, because you tackled the overall theme here. And I'll just go ahead and bring it up. When I pulled up the transfer portal for 2025 for Oklahoma State, I missed it because I should have looked at it earlier this morning to be even more prepared. But they get a receiver, and you said the name of this, like, it is unbelievably rare that I not only know the school, I know where it's at, I know its history. I literally did a double take on this. This is the epitome. We picked the right day to do this. Emory and Henry University. What? I had to look at that twice, and I'm like, okay, Cam Absher, he's signing with Oklahoma State. Who is this dude? He's a redshirt freshman. The stats that I have for him, I don't know what the accuracy is, but this is from Emory and Henry's statistics. 11 games played, 661 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's a redshirt freshman out of Roanoke, Virginia, played at Northside High School. 2023, that's what I had for him. I don't know if he played some last year. Maybe this is old. But
Yes.
like, that's the thing. Like, he probably played. They don't even have up-to-date stats. Like, that is where we're into the point of, this isn't just a player. This is a guy that is remote, because stats are everywhere. You can find anything. I got his 23 stats. That's hilarious. So probably he's a redshirt sophomore. I don't even know.
So I can help you out there. Last year he
Before.
did play. He had 51 receptions for 1,057 yards and almost 21 yards per completion.
Boom.
And you're right. It is difficult to kind of do the unearthing. But I'll tell you, one of the beauties of somebody like a Cam Abshire is he was very adamant that he wanted to take multiple visits before he came to Oklahoma State. But once he came to Stillwater and realized that there's something special cooking right now, he went ahead and committed immediately. Now, does that mean he's going to take the other visits? I'm not 100% sure. But regardless, it is, I think, an accentuation of what we just mentioned. The Big 12 does have to find unique ways to go get guys that the Notre Dames and the Alabamas and the Georgia of the world, they're just not going to go to Emory and Henry University.
Right.
They're not going to do that level of investigation. Typically, why? Because they can get the 5 stars, right? So if you can get the 5 stars to walk in the building at 6'4", 200 pounds, why would you go unearth one at a Division II school that, even though he's 6'4", 200 pounds, it's not typically the same transferable metrics, so they don't have to do it.
it still works for them though. I mean, it just Oklahoma State, if you wanted to use a barometer, and it's a 16-team league, you could use a lot of teams. They might be the golden child of under the radar. We figured it out before y'all. I would say Kansas State would be my other. Those two, I think, are the best for years. K-State, their coaching staff, man, they're not even the number one school historically in their own state, and it's a state with a lot of talent. But yet they're always competitive with OU and Texas and everybody else. It's coaching, and part of coaching is finding guys that fit your scheme, maximizing their talent year after year, moving guys at different spots nobody else saw. And Oak State under Gundy, offensively and defensively, has done the same. To that point, a couple of days ago, I talked about this on the Portal podcast extensively. Freddie Brock, he's a kid that comes in, and I mean, for the love of God, Oklahoma State and running back. Can you really question Gundy when he signs a running back, whether it's portal or high school or junior college? I don't. This kid played at Georgia State. He had like 700 some yards last year. He's a guy that averaged over 5 yards per tote, averaged enough yardage per carry. You're like, okay, that'll probably translate to the P4. And he also had several touchdowns. I think he had 8.
Yep. Well, and his thing, it's been development over time, right? He started his career at Maine. He had a 750-yard season at Maine before he goes, obviously takes his talents to Georgia State. Georgia State, he has an 819-yard season this previous year. His touches are good. His ability to bounce it outside is obviously what makes him pretty unique, but he did take a redshirt year as well. So he's been able to turn his body into maybe a Division II talent to eventually getting to this P4 level. And you mentioned it, coming to Oklahoma State for a running back's kind of a bold move because we're usually pretty stacked up at that position. It's not typically an area of concern. Wide receiver and running back are two positions that Oklahoma State expects to bring in those 4-star level dudes. Every other position, yes, we might have to get the developmental guys, but running back, wide receiver, if you're getting an offer from Oklahoma State from those two positions, it does in fact mean something regardless of the record this previous season. I
agree completely because you're putting guys in this thing they call the National Football League. People prefer to end up there. So Ollie Gordon, correct me if I am wrong. When Ollie arrived at OSU, he was just another 3-star kind of guy, right? He wasn't like elite based on the rank. I'm not saying OSU didn't value him higher, but is that correct?
Well, I think the litmus test for a lot of us was always, does he have a Texas offer, right? We'll call a spade a spade.
Oh, 100%.
And Ollie Gordon got a Texas offer like a week before National Signing Day. And he even said, and then he did get bumped up to a 4-star, go figure that one. But nonetheless, he had mentioned that his dream was Texas, but he felt disrespected that they waited until the very last minute before they made their offer and ended up at Oklahoma State. And you mentioned somebody else that could factor into this equation would be somebody like a Jalen Warren. Jalen Warren wasn't even a starter at Utah State, bro. He was like second or third string. He comes to Oklahoma State because we saw something that we thought we could develop. And he said it himself. The reason he comes back and has so much affinity for the Cowboys is because he wasn't fast enough to be the starter at Utah State. He spends 3 months with Rob Glass, and all of a sudden he's not an NFL-level guy, but he just got a contract raise, and he's still on a rookie deal, so they didn't have to give him more money. But they did anyways because they understand his value. And you mentioned Ollie Gordon, and I say that to say, how beautiful would it be to have Mason Rudolph back in Pittsburgh and they draft Ollie Gordon to be next to Jalen Warren? The Oklahoma State Steelers, it's coming, Brian. I can feel it in my loins, buddy.
That would be hilarious. There's some weird things like that happen, but the odds are kind of against you. It's 1 in 32. Yeah. There's 32 teams. That'd be hilarious, though. But Oak State, I would imagine NFL teams. Same thing with Kansas State again. I think Iowa State's in that ballpark. Yeah. You're going to get
Texas
a little
Tech's
bit
in that ballpark now too. They've kind of
had a meteoric
rise recently.
Yeah, McGuire's got it going on up there in Lubbock. They've kind of figured out, and their NIL is crazy too. But these teams are figuring out certain spots and doing it better. But last point here, before we move on to some of the players and stuff like that, I think that the Big 12 is setting a trend that we're now starting to see at other schools. Let me give you an example. Last year, Florida State flopped. You know what they did in the portal, Cody? They went and took the guys that were 4 and 5 stars that went to Bama and Georgia, but didn't produce.
Yep.
So if you take nothing else from this podcast today, whoever you are, wherever you are, note the following. Take production over star rankings once they reach college. the vast majority, if they don't play for 2 years and they were a 5-star, there's probably a reason or 3 for that to happen. I know that you and I have talked about some of this stuff off the record, but if you have like one flaw, everybody's human. We're all fallible. But if there's a 5-star guy that's 6'5", 280 playing D tackle out of high school, every got 50 offers, and he doesn't play for 2 years, Cody, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that there are underlying issues that, if Kirby Smart can't figure it out, you might want to bypass. I think Florida State has taken a huge change in that. They've changed how they do it. And several other schools, LSU has, and other programs. You got to be careful what you're doing. But the Big 12 was the first to the party on this. And I just want to give them a congrats. So when we come back, Cody and I are going to talk a little bit about some of the signees and the overall theme of the Big 12. And one of my all-time favorite players in college football, that is next here on the Portal Podcast. This message is from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available at TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. If there's a player that screams under the radar from the transfer portal, it's Cam Skattebo. I mean, that guy was at Sacramento State. He is one of my all-time favorite college football players, not because of production. It's, you know how they say, Cody, it's not the destination, it's the journey. His runs were journeys that were really unique. And it just shows you that sometimes guys just develop later. He was a good high school football player, but his only opportunity from the story that I saw was Sacramento State. And that's a local deal. He does well there, but I get it. You watch the film and I do, some of these guys at smaller levels. I know the first question that's going to pop in your head is, okay, he's kicking their can, but who's he playing against? How do you take that and say, you know what, we're Arizona State, come on down? It obviously worked out. He's unbelievable, and I think he'll have a very successful career.
Yeah.
Why do you think the Big 12 has done that again, we're using Cam here, and it's been so successful? Running back, again, Oklahoma State's had their fair share, to say the least. What is the deal with that? Why are they so early on it, and why they had so much success?
So again, I think it's finding things in evaluation phases that make the most amount of sense for particular universities. So we're talking specifically about Cam Skattebo. His size, right, his height and his speed was not going to be viewed by a lot of the major schools in the country as a valuable aspect, as opposed to Arizona State, who's looking to find some sort of solidification in the Big 12. Obviously, they did remarkable at that. But they found something in film, the low center of gravity, the ability to, shift laterally side to side and keep his vision, up, was something that they identified that a lot of other schools weren't really necessarily paying attention to.
I think this kind of translates to a few other things. Every now and then you hear about the basketball kid that moves over and he becomes a tight end or a defensive end. It's the same thing. It's the measurables. That's a word a lot of parents hate because if their kid doesn't have them, they don't like it. But he didn't have the height, but he had the weight and his strength and his body mass, the way he's put together. I know this is a little before your time, but he's John Riggins. That's from the late 70s, early 80s. That guy just ran over. If you don't know who he is, if you're too young for that, just Google John Riggins and click video.
Well, that was back when Washington was a little bit of a different animal, but yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, they were actually good.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really unique factor with this. Just based on Oklahoma State, I'll just leave it in your wheelhouse. Who are some of the other transfers they had last year or got coming in this year that kind of fit this parameter of, okay, you guys may not like them, but Gundy and his staff did, and I think they're going to be good. Give me your take on what the Cowboys got.
See, I think that's a phenomenal segue. It's almost like you've done this before. We have one of those guys in Malik Charles. His dad played in the NFL, but he did not want to play football. So he was a basketball guy growing up. And then his junior year of high school, he kind of fell out of love with basketball. His senior year, he wanted to try some football. Obviously, he had some abilities, but there wasn't going to be a lot of opportunities for him. He goes to JUCO, and he's kind of manipulated around because he did the natural thing. Every power forward in basketball goes and plays tight end, yeah? But he realized that he kind of had skill at hands. And then he found the defensive side of the ball, and that was much, much more interesting to him. So he's somebody who has some of your prototypical 6'4", 265-pound defensive end capabilities. He's got the NFL pedigree, but he's only been playing football for literally 3 years now. He's only been playing a defensive end for a year and a half, so it is entirely new to him. But this is another individual that the upside could be absolutely insane. And nobody was going to take a chance on him except for Oklahoma State. We have another one, Brandon Rawls, same thing. He hasn't been playing football for very long, so we go into Saginaw Valley State University, and we snag this linebacker that could factor in to the starting rotation this season, making up for somebody like a Nick Martin. And then on the other side of it, we did go with a little bit of the Florida State model. We got J.K. Johnson, formerly of LSU. He didn't play a lot this previous season. He did play quite a bit in previous years, but, he had a year on the bench. Now he's a Cowboy. Jalen Davies played a lot at UCLA, and now he's an Oklahoma State Cowboy. We got Chandavian Bradley, the former 5-star All-American that went to Tennessee, and then he won a national title last year at Hutch. He seems to be factored into the linebacker role. So those are some of the individuals, other than Chandavian Bradley and J.K. Johnson, that likely we're not going to have a lot of pursuers from other schools in the country. Another massive one is Brian McCoy. Brian McCoy got a 5th-round draft grade coming out of Akron University, and he turned that down to come to Oklahoma State. Now, Brian, why would somebody who gets a 5th-round draft grade out of Akron not take that?
They know they're good, and they're going to bet on themselves, which, by the way,
there you go.
That's a whole nother tangent that I love. Bet
on
yourself, brother. Love it.
99% of the time, if you get a 5th-round draft grade coming out of Akron, you take that, and you go to the NFL draft, and you take your chances, and you have some fun with it. It is very rare for a 5th-year senior to have a viable draft grade and say, you know what? I think I can do better. I think I'm a 3rd-rounder. I think I'm a 2nd-rounder. I'm going to go to Oklahoma State and prove it. That is absolutely massive, in my opinion.
That's one of the reasons, and there's a lot of things about the portal I don't like. You and I
talked
about that on and off air. But this is one of the elite points of it. And I grew up in the Midwest, and the MAC has actually got a lot of talent. That league has a lot of kids that end up in the NFL. But this is an example. One more year, but he's going to be on television more. He's going to go up against more guys. It's easier to evaluate at the P4 level. It just is.
Well, yes.
Yeah. And that's like when he's going up against anybody in the Big 12 from like K-State, Iowa State, Arizona, teams that have offensive linemen that you respect, that's going to matter.
There's always the unfortunate side of the NFL draft is there's always going to be a conversation about level of competition. So if you put up 160 tackles in the MAC, what does that equate to in the SEC?
100%.
Most people on the outside would say 155 tackles in the MAC means 65 tackles in the SEC. So if you do have the opportunity to play at a Power 4 conference, you're going to get a much more visual representation of what that talent could potentially possibly look like. And again, I think this is an area that the Big 12 is excelling. We're not afraid to go get the Emory and Henry University or the Saginaw State or the Valdosta State guys, as opposed to LSU. Respectfully, LSU wouldn't look good if they went and got somebody from Valdosta State, right? It's not a good look. If you can go get somebody from Clemson or Florida or Bama, why would you go get somebody from Saginaw Valley State? But the Big 12, they understand the lay of the landscape, and in the NIL and transfer portal era, it's going to be much more evened out now. And Brian, I think the 105 roster limitation is going to change the game once again, because now you're Bama. Remember the gray shirts, right? The Bamas of the world, they'd have a 200-man roster. Why? Because they could. And why would you allow this individual to go to Auburn when you can keep him on your roster and beat Auburn anyways?
That's it. The true story. Back in the day with Bear Bryant, and this wasn't just Bama, but I'm just going to use him as an example because he's Bear Bryant. They would be recruiting kids, and they'd be on the fence about player X, Y, and Z. But Bear would get word, well, player X, Y, and Z is going to go to Auburn or Tennessee or Georgia, one of their rivals.
Right.
And he'd say, oh, no. We're offering him. If it works out, great. But if it doesn't, he's on our bench and he's not playing against us.
100%.
This is before scholarship limits. They'd had 150-plus players on rosters.
Yep.
That's the difference in doing it. Now, it's an interesting topic that we'll have to get into on another show. I just want to mention this. It is going to 105 scholarships. How that's divvied up, I've been told, I'm not going to go into specific schools, there's going to be from 85 is the number it was last year.
Right.
Some schools are going to go to about 95. My guess is you're going to see more D linemen. If you're going to take chances, you're going to do it at premium positions. Offensive tackle, corner, D line, maybe that kid that's got a rocket arm, but he's got no ability to read a defense. You might let him come to your school and put him on. If it works out, great. If not, he's holding the clipboard and he's great for our scout team.
I don't appreciate you taking shots at Dr. Alan Bowman like that, sir. All right.
Okay.
I don't appreciate that much.
It is what it is, man. But the point is still the same. Everybody's going to do that different. They'll still have guys that are walk-ons technically, but they have to be on scholarship now. It's goofy. I don't know how you do that. And then there's the whole Title IX thing that goes into all that. I mean, college football makes Title IX a pain for all these schools, but that's what the NCAA wanted. And, with all the government involved in it. So it is what it is. When we come back, we're going to put Cody on the hot seat and talk just specifically about Oak State after last season. What are the Cowboys going to do this next year? That is next here on the Portal Podcast. All right, Cody. Last year was a faceplant. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
Where do they need to improve the most? And do you see any spots in the schedule where like, okay, this is the critical juncture? Everybody has that 3-game stretch. And it's like, man, we didn't catch the gods at a happy moment when they wrote this part of the schedule out. So what do they got to do? And where is it on the schedule that'll kind of tell the tale for the Cowboys?
Well, I could take the easy path and simply say we're going to be better, but being better than 3 wins, it doesn't really mean much. So I am going to jump out on a limb here and say that I think 8 wins should be the expectation, primarily because of the schedule. If you look at the schedule, we have 7 home games. We avoid Arizona State. We don't play BYU. We don't play Utah. We don't play TCU. We don't play West Virginia. So I do think that it sets us up for a very advantageous season, not to mention the heavy hitters we do play, like your Kansas States and your Iowa States. They're both at the latter half of the season. They're both at home. The only road games that seem to be slightly trepidatious would be going to Texas Tech, going to Lawrence, and then going to the bounce house. Now, what is Scott Frost's team going to look like year one? Who really knows? But at the same time, we've already seen going to the bounce house is not an easy proposition. Nonetheless, I do feel like that Brett Yormark and the football gods gave Mike Gundy a very advantageous schedule to get them back on track. It would be an absolute travesty if the Cowboys were not able to convert 7 home games into at least 7 W's. Not to mention the fact that I think that the NFL pedigree that we've brought over on both sides of the ball from the staff is going to allow us to do something offensively that we haven't seen in Cowboy country for years. Doug Meacham was part of those epic years of Brandon Weeden and Justin Blackman and Mason Rudolph and Tylan Wallace, James Washington. All of that was with Doug Meacham's hand in the cookie jar. Now he's back in the fold. He got to learn some things at TCU, right? He got to be part of that Trayvon Boykin offense that was absolutely masterful. And I think he's going to be able to combine all of that to make it make more sense. We've got 3 offensive line coaches. We talked about this NFL thing that we're doing. Yes, Oklahoma State has been the KISS method, right? We had 1 safety coach that coached the DBs, the safeties, free safeties, strong. Now we don't have that. We have a cornerbacks coach. We have a nickelbacks coach. We have a free team. We have coaches for every single individual position. We have 3 linebacker coaches. So the individual technique and training is going to be something that should transcend Oklahoma State because Mike Gundy has never, ever, ever done this before. He's never had this SEC recruiting model. He's never had an NFL staff put together an NFL plan. And I'm hearing this from players and coaches alike. This is being operated in Stillwater like OTAs, rookie mini camps, and getting up to the cuts, right? The preseason is all about getting down to that 53-man rosters. We're doing the same thing because you're already covering 100, more than 104 guys. Yeah, I know. Words are hard for me, buddy. And then after the freshmen come in post-spring, you're going to be at 125-ish. You're going to have to make cuts. So it's being orchestrated that way. The level of competition is absolutely masterful, and there is no complacency. That was the issue last year. Having coaches for 15, 17, 19 years, yes, it is awesome on paper. But what it did was it allowed coaches to say, well, I don't have to do that today because my buddy's got it. And then his buddy would say, well, I don't have to do that today because the seniors got the underclassmen. And that wasn't happening. There was no checks and balances. It was nothing but complacency, which caused laziness. And that is not going to happen this year. Mike Gundy hired a staff that has something to prove. They've recruited like they have something to prove, and they've brought guys in the transfer portal from Tennessee, LSU, Oregon, UCLA, clearly indicating on top of those lower lying guys that this is a season of change. This is a new time in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I think you're seeing that out of the recruiting numbers. It's not just smoke and mirrors. When 4-star, 5-stars are getting on campus now, they're actually enjoying the process, going out and publicly speaking about how there's something crazy happening in Stillwater, and a lot of people want to be a part of it now.
That's a really refreshing take because let's be honest, after last year, it would be easy. And this, I'm going to guarantee you, when we get to like late May and everybody starts just throwing out all these different magazines and their different articles and predictions. Well, they sucked last year. It's hard to pick the Big 12. We're going to put them in the bottom half. What is, off the top of your head, what does FanDuel have Oak State at for over-under this year? You know, by chance?
I think it was 7.5 or 6.5. It might have even been 6.5.
Based on what you're saying, if especially the thing you mentioned about O-line, like O-line is hard to coach. It's really
correct.
Hard.
Yes.
And DB now is a nightmare because every team you play, even if they're a power football team like Georgia, they're power football. They'll still come out and spread and then run the ball. If your DBs don't know where they're going based on formations and shifts, you miss a run gap fit against the most generic outside zone play the world has ever seen. It's a touchdown.
Right.
It's just, I mean, it just sounds so, it's a run gap fit. No, not exactly. There's a little more to it than that. So having more DB coaches, more O-line coaches, all those little things. And I don't know what the limit is now. Like, is he assistant to the assistant to the, every school has that. I don't know how it all works, but there's other schools that have done it too. But if Oak State was behind, like they were trying to catch up and they did, it should make a difference because if it didn't, you hired the wrong people. Obviously.
Well, I mean, so a perfect example, you mentioned the offensive line. Charlie Dickey was an absolute legend at Kansas State. He was part of the Colin Klein rushing for Heisman races and all of that. Yet for some reason, it didn't translate in Stillwater. And so you can be an absolute legend in the game, but I think the advancements defensively have changed over time. You have teams that can go from a 3-4 to a 4-3 to a 3-3-5, all in the same series of plays. That is difficult for offensive linemen. So the fact that the Cowboys have center coaches, guard coaches, and tackle coaches that can explain verbiage from multiple levels, because some of these guys have already been coordinators. They've been offensive coordinators that took demotions because they used to play at Oklahoma State and they want to be part of the resurgence. So it's not just simply bringing guys in that used to play for Oklahoma State. It's the mixture of the NFL guys, the SEC guys. I mean, you got to think Todd Grantham and his staff have been coaching together since 2016 at Mississippi State. And then they followed each other to Florida. And then some of them followed each other to Louisville. And then a couple of them went off to the NFL. And now they're all back together. It's a pretty exciting time. And then lastly, I will say, so the defensive side of the ball, it's all predicated upon the NFL methods. So it's going to take some time. But offensively, Oklahoma State has never had a quarterback that was in charge of everything, right? Typically, back in the Brandon Whedon days, the objective was to get the ball out of your hand in 2.7 seconds, which means you made like 2 reads, and that was that, right? And then most recently, it was pretty much hand the ball off to Ollie Gordon, hope and pray. This is where the quarterbacks are actually getting up to the line of scrimmage, calling audibles, calling shifts, moving protection, shifting the players in motion. This is new. This has never, ever, ever happened in Stillwater, and that should give us a cause for a ton of excitement.
When you're able to coordinate with each other in an offense with shifts, the idea is just basic leverage.
Yes.
It's like a post player in basketball.
Numerical advantages. That's it.
If you've got the inside shoulder to the baseline, locking the guy off, well, if the pass goes down to the baseline on that side, it's a layup. If it's not, then it's bad. These are really simple things, but it's getting to that point. And the idea behind shifts is hoping the defense just, quite frankly, has a bust. Because if you have a tight end that goes out into the formation, you got 3-on-2 and you run a screen.
Right.
It's
always a tell for a quarterback as well, right? If you send certain shift to certain sides of the field and the defense doesn't follow, that indicates that you're in some sort of a zone. If they do follow, you're going to be more isolated and man-to-man, and that can change what your audible becomes. Again, Oklahoma State has always operated off of the KISS method. Get the 2-star guy that's going to develop. We're going to keep everything simple, and we're just going to distribute the ball very efficiently and quickly. This is completely different. This is a brand new time in Cowboy country. We have never followed the SEC and NFL model before. Now we're in it. I feel like it's going to work, and I feel like our schedule is advantageous to us showing the world that it can work.
Man, that's great stuff. I appreciate it, Cody. Tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
You can find me all day. I yell in front of this microphone, locked on Oklahoma State, obviously. I do travel the country a little bit and do some 7-on-7 coverage with Epic Sports, Prospect Sports, and shout out to Capital Media, Jim Williams, and Big 12 Mafia crew.
I appreciate that, man. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you get your pods. Spotify, Apple, Odyssey, YouTube, same place you can find Locked on Oklahoma State. You can find Locked on the Portal. We will see you again soon. Everybody have a good one.